So, thank you all very much today for coming along. We're going to talk to you today about Yammer and Teams and how to use them in conjunction. So, hopefully you know a little bit about both of the apps, but we will go through a little bit of the basic version. First of all, just to make sure we're all on the same page. But before we do, just wanted to introduce ourselves quickly. So, we're from Reed, a recruitment agency. I'm Danny King, the engagement manager looking after training, communications, adoption, and Gemma, cloud product owner, so looking more after the technical side. Thank you very much to all of our sponsors, as I'm sure you've heard many times today, but the reality is we wouldn't be here without them. We couldn't do it without them. So, big thank you to them to make this event happen. So just really quickly to look through our agenda. So we want to look at our business then, before our transition, before we moved to not only Teams and Yammer, but we actually did a bit of a big bang. We moved all of our storage, everybody got a device, and yeah, it was quite a big change journey for us. So we're going to look at how our business looked then. We're going to look at what Teams is, how we use Teams, what Yammer is, and how we use Yammer, then how we use them in conjunction. Then we can look at our business now, but then most importantly, we're going to look at what's next as well. So over to Gemma.
So first of all, just to talk a little bit about our business then, just to kind of provide you with some context for our change. So our company mantra is Better Never Stops, and our transition to Microsoft 365 and digital workplace definitely had this in mind. Prior to our transition, the business was pretty desk-bound. They were using Citrix terminals with Lotus Notes, meaning that we weren't really refreshing our technology any more than every 5 years, and this kind of always caused a lot of disruption and wasn't really delivering any kind of business benefits. So the new approach was to move to an evergreen technology platform, which would give us the ability to kind of continually evolve and kind of add real value to the business from a technology point of view. So this was a huge transition for us as a company with over 3,000 permanent employees who have been very used to kind of their ways of working on the same technology for many years. And we started our transition a couple of years ago, however, it was unsurprisingly heavily impacted and sped up by the pandemic, and we completed our transition in August last year after being kind of chipped along a little bit by what happened earlier last year. Our transformation focused on two key themes, which were technology and culture. So these were identified during our discovery phase, where we worked with an external consultancy to kind of get feedback from our business and find out what their ways of working were and what was most important to them in order to improve those and help them with that. And some of the statistics from what came out from that are on the slide at the moment. So the key takeaways from a technology perspective were that our co-members wanted the ability to work anywhere. As a large proportion of them are kind of on the go, being recruitment consultants, they're often out at meetings, so on the go, and the ability to kind of be able to work while they were doing that moving around would kind of save them a lot of time and really help them out. And integrated technology, kind of on the same theme, giving them the ability to work across multiple different devices in a streamlined way. And from a culture point of view, they wanted better communication and better collaboration. So today we're mainly going to focus on the culture aspect and how we've used Teams and Yammer to promote and improve communication and collaboration within our organisation. So just to move on to Teams. So first of all, I'm going to talk about Teams, and then I'm going to hand over to Danny. She's going to talk about Yammer and how we use it together. So Teams is obviously a communication platform with a range of functionality that was all completely new to our business. Only a small number of people had previously had access to any kind of chat functionality, and the concept of kind of video calling and file collaboration were completely new to all of them from a working environment. When we transitioned to Teams, we introduced all Teams functionality in one go, meaning that it was a one-stop shop for our business to chat, access files, collaborate, make calls, and stay connected to the wider organisation. This means that Teams is now a hugely central part of our business's everyday activities, as I'm sure it is on a lot of people's organisations, and is used in a variety of ways to support great communication and collaboration, both internally and externally. So now I'm just going to go into a bit more detail about how we've been using it and what's kind of been successful for us. So both kind of during our initial transition and then also more recently. So during our initial transition, we migrated all our files from on-prem storage to Teams using ShareGate. So our business structure and how files were stored previously quite easily mapped to working groups, which enabled us to kind of set up a similar structure in 365 with working groups and teams, and then we could kind of migrate this all across so that it's sort of mapped to teams that we pre-created, which aided our transition. So whilst the location of these files was new, the kind of how they were accessing them and who had access to them was quite familiar to the business, which definitely helped. We used ShareGate to complete the migration, as I said, as users transitioned, meaning that all their files were kind of ready and waiting for them as soon as they started using Teams, and they didn't have any need to kind of go back to any on-prem legacy folders or anything like that. So this kind of really helped to encourage collaboration and increased users' use of Teams from the kind of very start of their move to digital workplace. So in terms of chat and the use of online video calls, these were obviously also new ways of working for our business, as I said. As many people have found over the past year and a half, these tools have been particularly useful to kind of stay connected whilst we've all been kind of working from different places. And across our business internally, these are now heavily used features, as I'm sure they are in many organisations now that hybrid working is more common. So as well as kind of using it internally, a couple of cases where we found online video calls really have added value are for our recruitment consultants to stay connected to their candidates and clients that they're working with. So obviously during the pandemic they weren't able to go out and do face-to-face visits, and obviously these strong relationships that they build with clients and candidates are really crucial to their work. So the ability to kind of keep up that face-to-face connection via online video calls is really beneficial. And also our learning and development team also use Teams to run daily virtual lunch and learn sessions throughout the summer, which have also continued on a slightly less frequent basis, which are really popular and really help to promote a sense of support and community within our organisation. They were always advertised on Yammer to kind of promote them on there, then recorded on Teams and uploaded to Yammer afterwards, which really helped to drive engagement and visibility. So in terms of our governance on Teams, as it was new to our business, we locked down Teams creation, so this had to come via IT just to kind of provide a bit of standardisation and control initially. And we require each team has a minimum of 2 owners just to kind of help with in case there's absences or anything like that. However, once IT have assisted with this initial setup, it's very much down to the business and the team owners to manage those themselves. So this kind of means or meant for us that the business was ultimately responsible for their data for the first time, which was completely new to them, but also kind of helped give them the autonomy to manage themselves, also helped meaning that these queries weren't coming through to IT, which obviously saves them our service desk valuable time to kind of be looking at how they can add value elsewhere. So more recently, we decided to move to cutting the cord from our legacy telephone systems. So we've only just finished that rollout, and it's getting a huge amount of popular feedback across our business, and this is mainly due to the ease of having everything in one place, so not having to, obviously you can do your team video calls from the same place, but being able to also call externally and directly, which is a huge part of a recruitment consultant's day-to-day activity, is really, really beneficial, and it also gives them the recruitment branches the ability to have more responsibility over their call groups and queues, which they previously would have had to rely on IT for, which ultimately has provided them with a greater level of flexibility to manage this themselves and a better customer experience, because it means that they can ensure that the right people are available on the phones at the right times. This move to Teams calling also included the ability to, the addition of click-to-call functionality from our CRM system. So we've integrated the two, which means that these recruitment consultants can easily just click a button in our CRM system, which they're in every day, all day, every day, and they can do a Teams call directly from there, which is another really valuable time saver for them as part of their day-to-day activities. So handing over to Dan to talk about the Yammer.
Just to get a feel for the room, how many of you know Yammer and used it before? Okay, so for those of you who've never seen it before, I find it easiest to explain as a little bit of a corporate Facebook, really. Everything's on there, it's very easy to see, shares, likes, comments, as you would normally see in your day-to-day. So it's all about connecting, it's all about communicating, and it's all about sharing. So we have, as a business, primary number of our offices within the UK, but we do have international offices. Especially during the COVID pandemic, where their managers are actually based in the UK, it was very difficult to create those connections and those relationships So actually Yammer became a really good port of communication, sharing information. The international offices all have a Yammer group that they're all community in, and they can all share that best practice and good news more than anything, because it was quite a dark time. Networking obviously has increased because you're talking to people in all the same space, and as Gemma mentioned earlier, our technology was quite outdated before we moved to this transition, so this was a very new concept for people, that they could actually share knowledge. And being in a sales environment, there's very much a trying to keep everything close to your chest, because you're trying to win sales, you're trying to make the most money. So that was quite a bit of a culture shock actually, to not only initially even want to share that knowledge, but actually then understanding the benefit of doing that and actually improving the company as a whole. Potentially not directly related to this, but we're actually the best our business has ever been. Our net income per consultant has gone through the roof. So things like this, and I've mentioned at the bottom, working out loud and sharing that information is actually a really important part of our business. People who necessarily didn't get that before this transition. But another big thing that we've really focused on is leadership, communication and engagement. There's always this gap between the bottom line and your senior leaders, your board members, that everyone is always trying to reduce. And I'll come on to that a little bit more in a second. But it's really about that sharing, that communicating, and making sure that everyone is on the same page. So again, how we're using Yammer. And again, very similar structure as Gemma mentioned earlier. So during our initial transition, so we mentioned earlier that we actually had quite a big company-wide transition. We were moving from on-prem storage to cloud. We were moving from Windows 7 to Microsoft 365. There was a lot of information to take in. It was just as the pandemic hit, and everyone was suddenly working from home, which was another big change as well. So we needed to find a way to communicate with everybody. And we actually took the decision to roll out Yammer to our workforce before they migrated to Microsoft 365. So we gave them specific Yammer licenses that they could go to from office.com so that they could get that information. And it meant that on the day they received their Surface device, they were trying to set it up. They had a bit of support. We actually set up support groups that they could go to in Yammer. They could ask us questions. They could get instant responses, which again was something new. Previously, they'd had to email the service desk or call, but actually they had a community they could go to, they could share information, they could tag their colleagues in it, and it just provided that platform and a little bit more security for this quite big, scary change all in one day. And we managed to persuade our very newly appointed at the time MD to post weekly vlogs, which again, a very new concept. We'd never really used video in the company before. And bless him, he was also very new to the role, so it was a big change for him too. But actually now it's getting really good feedback. People felt so connected during that time when there was a lot of change happening. He was giving updates on furlough schemes, what was happening with COVID and how the business was progressing, and actually really brought that company together purely by posting a 2-minute vlog once a week, and that's all it did. So again, governance, we actually took a slightly different approach with Yammer. We actually let people create their own communities, and as many as they wanted. The reason we kind of kept teams a little bit more controlled was to make sure that we didn't get this influx of groups, because we did see it in Yammer. As soon as we opened up that ability for people to create groups, we suddenly had 200 groups within the space of about an hour, because people got excited. But actually that was a really good engagement method, because it meant people could play. They had that platform, they could go in, they could create a group, they could add their friends, they could see what it was, and again, a very new concept. So it was good to see and good to watch people do that. It does mean that we've had to have some governance around it. So again, minimum of 2 owners per group. We do have quite a high turnover, being a recruitment company, so again, that 2 owners means that if somebody is away or leaves, you've still got that control. It's not down to IT to go in, sweep in and fix it at the end. We try to make sure that every group is public. We try to make sure that every group is easily identifiable and it's active. There is no point having 200 Yammer groups that are all just sitting there with no information in there and no one really engaging. So we do quite a lot of governance monitoring. We'll check inactive groups. We have an email template that we'll send out and are looking to automate, where we'll contact the owners and say, actually, you haven't had any activity in your Yammer group in X number of days. Do you want some extra training? Do you want some help in engagement? Can we help you bring people to this community? If they say no, we make an agreement to close it. And they have the ability to start a new one in the future if they want to. But we have found that people did get that initial excitement, did set up a group when they had a little bit of time, they've got busy, they don't have the time to monitor it, and actually it's gone away. And I think you're always going to get that, and that's okay. Because what we do have is a number, I think there's 6 groups, and again I'll talk to it in a second, but Yammer recently brought out the functionality to be able to create an official group. So we have 6 what we would call official company groups that we do make sure are active. We've got HR involved, we've got senior leaders, and we've got people who are driving their engagement to make sure that there is information flowing in Yammer as a whole. Recently, it's been officially named as the comms tool of choice for our company, which is very exciting, if a little bit daunting. So it's all about adoption now. It's making sure people understand the value. It's making sure, because we are a target-driven company, people are given the time to look at it, and it's not seen as a bad thing. They're not wasting time. They're actually getting information, sharing knowledge, networking, and making sure that they are building a better business. So how do we use them together? The easiest way that I can see to explain it, OneDrive is very much my workspace. It's my work, it's my information. I'll share it if I need to and if I want to and who I want to share it with. Teams is our workspace. So it's for groups of people, for projects, for short or long projects, programs, whatever it might be, but you've got a group of people who are all sharing and collaborating together. Whereas Yammer is a showroom. It's sharing information, it's working out loud, it's pushing it out to the business, it's preventing people from having to reinvent the wheel, and it's making sure that it is being shown and developed and pushed to everybody there. But more importantly, it gives people the ability to comment on it and like and share with their colleagues as well. So our business now, Gemma talked right at the beginning about focus on technology and culture. We sent out a survey recently to all of our colleagues and had just over 500 responses. And one of the questions we asked them was, what has been the best benefit of this transition? Teams calling, Teams chat, and portability, being able to work from anywhere with the top 3. We've integrated with Yammer and Teams. We've integrated with our LMS system, which is now an add-in to our Teams platform for everybody. And collaboration, as Gemma mentioned, we kind of forced people into that by migrating all their files into Teams, but actually they had no choice and they had to learn new ways of working. So putting all of the training sessions and the webinars and the user guides out there, when it came down to it, actually they didn't have a choice, and that was one of the ways that really pushed them to do that. But there's more to it than that. We've changed behaviour, we've changed culture. So our MDs, as I mentioned, weekly log goes out. Actually, it's more frequently than weekly at the moment. But as an example, the most recent one, which was yesterday, actually, he had 800 views, 35 reactions, and 12 comments within the first hour of posting that. You're getting to people quickly. You're not only posting in Yammer, but that also sends an email notification to people, which, as a recruitment consultant, that is where you spend all of your day, in your emails. It's transparent. When you're doing a vlog, you can't hide information, people feel connected to you, and it decreases that gap that I mentioned earlier between the board or the SLT and those colleagues. They actually feel like they can comment, they can reply, they can ask questions, and that's something we never had before. One of the issues that we had before this transition was endless cascades where a manager would send an email to their reports, who would send it to their reports, messages would get diluted, they wouldn't get read. So this provides one version of the truth. Everyone sees that vlog at the same time, or within a few hours of each other, so it makes sure that message isn't diluted. Our chairman, James Reed, used to write a blog. It was on the static internet. and was very much that. It was static. That's now moved to Yammer. And again, people feel that they can comment, they can like, they can share, and actually we've seen a couple of instances where they have shared it externally or put a clip on LinkedIn, or actually being dynamic with it rather than taking that information in. We've also used it for things like training. So, for example, we have a monthly security post that goes out, which again was something we never really had before, really trying to teach people not only about how to do their job, but the extras for staying safe online, security, things that they can do to help themselves and the company. Read News I mentioned, which was on our static internet, and Gemma's talked about the platform for L&D. Because we're a people business, we like face-to-face training, as we found in our most recent survey, but it's given them another platform. We've gone from completely face-to-face training to actually a mixture of both, and I think that's really important for different learning styles. Not everyone is happy to sit in a room for a couple of hours watching presentations, so actually this gives people options which are people when they And along the same lines, we've actually started a campaign where we post every other week a 1-minute video that is guaranteed to save you 10 minutes. So we're looking about time savings. We're trying to be creative with the things that we're pushing out there. And Yammer gives us that tool to do that. So obviously recording them in Teams, posting them in Yammer and sharing that information. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about it today, but champions are very important. So we have an individual champions community where we're sharing best practice, we're giving them extra information. They also have a Teams group where we share information about the Evergreen platform and things changing from day to day. But it's another way to engage them and to bring them into the information that, let's face it, is updating daily. And it's a much more informal way to do that. So, very quickly, what's next? So, I mentioned it earlier, but it's really important to keep on top of these. These aren't systems that you can just push out and leave. There is an element of monitoring and making sure that they're kind of governed and kept up to date and people are using them in the right way. So we absolutely are going to be looking at our Yammer and Teams strategies and keep reinventing them and making sure they're keeping up, because during the pandemic, I think our business was about 2,000 people, and I think last week it's gone up to 5,000. So we as a business are always changing, and we have to keep up with that. There is no point having one strategy. It needs to keep evolving and moving as we do too. As I mentioned a second ago, we've got the official groups in Yammer now, so it's a really good push to make sure people know where to look, because there is information everywhere, and obviously Viva will help with that, bringing it all into one place. But again, just educating people and making sure they know where to find that key information and how. With Teams in particular, we want to really use those features better, so as Gemma mentioned, people are in charge of their team now. What we're finding is that they're not using it necessarily, so channels as an example, they're not always using channels in the best way. But that's something us as experts can help them with that. Doing training sessions and making sure they're understanding the benefit of that rather than keeping it very on pace. And with Yammer, again, similar features, so using things like Yam Jams and town halls. Does everyone know what they are? No. Okay, so Yam Jam is quite an interesting concept. It's an idea where you have somebody available for a certain amount of time, so say half an hour. We've done it before where it's our head of HR, so we did it through the pandemic.
Oh, like an Ask Me Anything.
Exactly that, yeah. So that person is available for that half an hour, we can answer lots of questions and get immediate responses. A bit like a conversation, I suppose you could say, but obviously not. It's not reinventing the wheel, isn't it? Whereas town halls are big presentations to the whole business all at the same time. We want to look at campaigns, we want to look at things like meeting etiquette, SharePoint training and hybrid meetings. Again, we're in a very different world now. Our consultants were used to going out, visiting clients and candidates and having that face-to-face relationship. So again, trying to help them with that and understand how you would need to make changes when you're doing it via technology or via Teams calling, because it is a slightly different set of skills that you do need to learn as you go through. And we've chosen to do that in campaigns. So our campaign runs roughly 6 weeks. They're hosted in Yammer. Every week we talk about a different topic or a different challenge or something that they can do or get involved with to go through that learning journey. And finally, we want to make sure that we continue measuring, because again, with our strategy is ever changing. We need to make sure that we're measuring and we're keeping up to date and it's still being beneficial. So ultimately, if any of you are familiar with ADCAR, we're in this reinforcement stage. Very much this is an ongoing journey and we need to keep people engaged and using those tools correctly. And that is it. Thank you very much for joining. Does anyone have any questions on this session? What kind of... Oh?
Was there a drop in Outlook usage?
So, it's a tricky one. Outlook is very important for our business because it's the external facing communications that they have with their clients and candidates. So, yes, the number of internal communications has gone down, but what I think has actually happened is it's made it much easier to find the important information quickly. Because in theory, Outlook should be external, and Teams and Yammer should be internal. So actually it's reduced the amount of internal cascades and communications that you have, meaning that they can focus on that important client email that's just come in that needs an important response. So yes, but not in a bad way.
might be interesting to measure how many attachments there are on your emails.
Yes, absolutely.
Do that as a tracking measure.
Yeah, we're looking at different ways of working at the moment because we don't have external sharing on at the moment. That's something really big that we want to look at in the future, where we can actually bring our clients into our tenant. They can actually communicate to us in a way. So there will still be attachments at the moment where we're sharing between business, but we absolutely need to get to that place where we're all one team.
Could you give me an example of some of the content you share with your take 1 minute to share 10 kind of thing? That sounds intriguing.
I don't have any Wi-Fi, but yes, I'll find a way.
Actually.
I mean, we have things like, oh my gosh, you're testing me now. Let me have a think and I'll come back to you maybe after the session. Thank you.
I have another one that...
Oh, go on.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So in my organisation, so we're about 1,500 big, we've definitely got a culture clash where we've got some parts of the organisation that are really on the Yammer train and some particular engineering function is very much in the team space. Did you experience that kind of thing and find people putting Yammerish stuff on Teams or Teamsy kind of things on Yammer or anything like that?
Actually, no. Actually, it was we have areas of business such as finance potentially who actually just don't engage with Yammer because they don't see any value in it. They're not going to.
Yeah.
And I've kind of just let that go, if I'm honest. I think that's going to be a challenge for another year. But I think because people, because we released Yammer right at the, I don't know if you were here right at the beginning, but we actually released Yammer before we moved to this transition. And it helped set the tone of what it was for. So before we migrated, we had guidelines on what to use and also a bit of almost like a terms and conditions, if you like, that people had to review and understand what it was for. And I think that probably really helped to understand the context of both things and what to use. But yeah, we do have certain teams that just, I don't think will ever fully engage with something like that. That's a communications and sharing platform, which is a shame. Here's my challenge.
It sounds like you've got I'm just curious as to what sort of size team you've got, driving kind of the engagement through Yammer and then maintaining the ongoing
Yes, a good question. So I manage a team of 3, but as a wider digital ethics team, my team of 30. But that includes cloud analysts and consultants, along with Gemma's technical side as well. So as an engagement team, we're a team of 400. Slightly busy.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll pick up video on the take 1 to save 10, so I don't want us to listen. Please stay, but otherwise, thank you all very much.